Hi, guys. Good
Hey, Greg.
evening.
Yeah, welcome on in. We really appreciate you joining us tonight. A little bit about Greg Bell. He's a Seattle Seahawks beat writer of the News Tribune. And I wanted to personally say, Greg, on your Twitter, I noticed that you're a veteran, and we really appreciate our veterans here. We understand that freedom is not free, and there's a lot of people in the military from all over that watch our show. So thank you very much for your service to this great country. And I saw you're even on your bio it says twins dad. My dad is an identical twin, so that's yeah. So I know twin life is a different life. But anyways, thank you
It
very much
is.
for joining us. And we have Coach Smook along with us. He's part of our staff right here at BAMA Football on YouTube. So thank you very much and welcome on in.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for the shout out to the military. Beat
Yeah,
Navy.
thank you.
Coach, I know Alabama's a big staff. What role do you have there? I know they have like 50 assistants.
Who, me? I'm not an actual coach for the
kidding.
staff, man. I was about to say, look, don't put me in that type of. Maybe one day, but not right now, not in the near future.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and what Coach Smook has, we have him obviously as a personality, but also, how interviews are conducted and getting facilitating interviews, whether that's player or parent interviews or whatever it is. There's a lot of moving parts, as you can imagine. But you're right, Alabama has so many coaches. But the one coach that we are talking about tonight, and I wanted to get with you, is clearly about Ryan Grubb. And kind of earlier when we were talking on the phone, I just wanted to just straight up ask you some questions because there's a lot of speculation going on about Ryan Grubb, and I want to be sure to report responsibly. So you're up in Seattle, you cover the Seahawks, and my first question to you is Ryan Grubb still under consideration for the Seahawks offensive coordinator position as of today?
As far as I know, yes. And Kyle, that's a source of the NFL, a league source I trust, told me last week that he was, quote, under consideration. Now, he also told me that Grubb was one of multiple candidates. I haven't had anything to suggest or tell me that he has in fact interviewed formally with the Seahawks for their job, the offensive coordinator job. But that doesn't mean he is not a candidate. And that's could happen at any time. As I mentioned on the phone, they are really not going against anyone in the NFL for an offensive coordinator position anymore. The New Orleans Saints had what was thought to be the last one, and they're waiting on the Super Bowl to hire an assistant with the San Francisco 49ers, Clint Kubiak. So it's the Seahawks having the field and really no time pressure of another team, potentially NFL team, hiring their guys. So that's part of the reason why it's played out this way. Also, the NFL rules state you can't interview a Super Bowl assistant coach for any job until the Super Bowl is over.
Mm-hmm.
And the Seahawks have a couple potential candidates on the Chiefs and 49ers staff that they could then talk to after the Super Bowl. So why would they be rushing things before they had an opportunity to do that? So that's where it stands. Nothing firm on Ryan Grubb being interviewed at the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as we were kind of talking earlier in our show, if you could just kind of list out some other guys. I know you just mentioned some that were, in the Super Bowl this coming weekend, but who are some other guys on the target list? Because I know Chip Kelly's name had been mentioned, but then today, obviously, we heard that he's the offensive coordinator now with Ohio State after Bill O'Brien is going to Boston College. So if you could just kind of sprinkle out some other names that are in the mix for Seattle from what you've heard.
Well, there's a passing game coordinator for the Detroit Lions that he had. Again, I haven't been told that he's been interviewed. He's reportedly been a candidate that they want to be looking for. They're connecting the dots. There's a potential that they are interested in multiple Super Bowl assistant coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Blameyer, for instance, is a pass game coordinator for the Chiefs. Has a history with Andy Reid. Andy Reid has a history with the Seahawks general manager, John Schneider. They were at the Packers together in the early to mid-'90s. And John Schneider's a Green Bay native. He has deep connections with around the NFL that started in Green Bay. So that could be part of the reason they're waiting as well. Grubb was another that under consideration. I never got confirmation that Chip Kelly actually interviewed with the Seahawks. And the timing of that report by the Ringer was curious. It was the night before signing day, which people in LA will tell you that Chip Kelly punted away signing day for UCLA anyway. But for him to steal away the night before signing day to interview in Seattle would have been odd timing. I don't know that ever occurred. And so where it stands is that I don't have direct knowledge of anyone actually interviewing yet with the Seahawks for this job. And I have a list of potential candidates, and Grubb, me personally, Grubb's the only one I was told was under consideration.
Now, when we get to the interview process, and as we were talking about earlier on the phone, I mean, in your experience, are these done in person? Are these virtual type interviews? I mean, are there any rules and parameters to kind of the interview process that we should be aware of kind of going forward?
Well, Kyle, there are rules if you're hiring an NFL employee. But for those that aren't in the NFL, there are no rules. In the NFL, if you're interviewing an NFL employee for an NFL assistant coach job or a head coaching job, the league has put in rules about during the playoffs, you have to do initial interviews virtually via Zoom during certain weeks. The wild card round, for instance, for a top seed, if you're the Chiefs and the 49ers, or Chiefs and the Ravens this year, then you had to have interviewed them in the first week of the wild card round, and then not again till their season's over, or not again till the conference championship games were done. Right. If you had, in the case of Mike Macdonald, the head coach the Seahawks hired as the defensive coordinator from the Baltimore Ravens, they had not talked to him for the first time until after the Ravens lost the AFC title game a couple of weeks ago. And then they hired him in short order in 2 days, which is why they waited until the title game was over before they had their coach. I think in similar ways is why they're waiting to hire an offensive coordinator after the Super Bowl, because of those rules. The NFL says that if the Super Bowl assistant coach is a candidate, he cannot be talked to and hired until after the Super Bowl is over. Now, in the case of Ryan Grubb, none of that applies. In the case of Chip Kelly, even in the case of a guy like Mike Vrabel, who was fired by the Tennessee Titans last month, he doesn't apply because he's not an NFL employee currently. You can interview them anytime under any Zoom, telephone, pigeon, anything, or in person. And so it's freer. They also don't have reporting rules that the NFL does. If you want to ask permission to an NFL assistant coach who is under contract with another team, you have to file set paperwork, boilerplate paperwork to the league to ask for that permission. It goes through league headquarters and then down to the team. The Seahawks actually had the New York Giants deny permission to offensive coordinator Mike Kafka to interview for the Seahawks offensive coordinator job after they'd already granted him permission to interview for the head coaching job a couple weeks earlier. So there are steps, and that's how leaks come out with the NFL process, because there are a lot of hands that hand that paperwork. There are a lot of people who know about the paper that goes in to get a request for an interview. And so that's how you get the source says that so-and-so is a candidate and it will be interviewed on this day. It's because the paperwork, there is no paperwork for a Ryan Grubb or a college employee because they don't have the same NFL rules.
Does the fact that Ryan Grubb, he doesn't have any NFL coaching experience, does that make him a lesser candidate for the Seattle Seahawks? And I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, we're talking about this earlier. I mean, he's certainly a hot name. I even saw him on some early hot boards for UCLA's head football coaching job. I don't know if any of that is true, but I mean, he's a hot name. I mean, Washington was just in the national title game, against Michigan. What's your take on that in terms of him having no NFL experience?
Well, normally I'd say yes, and normally with the first time 36-year-old head coach the Seahawks just hired, a defensive coordinator with no head coaching experience, you would think the offensive play caller would side toward an NFL experienced play caller. But Mike Macdonald said that is not at the top of his list for criterion that they're going to consider for this job. And the very fact they fired Pete Carroll in Seattle January 10th was the indication that they are completely starting over and going outside the box. The Mike Macdonald hire is outside the box. It's they waited 3 weeks, which itself was outside the box. They're doing it unconventionally. They hired a special teams coach, Jay Harbaugh, Jim's son from the University of Michigan, who's actually younger than the youngest head coach in the NFL right now. He's 2 years younger than Mike Macdonald to be the special teams coordinator. All that's a long way of saying that anything's possible with this new staff. They hired Leslie Frazier to be an assistant head coach and defensive assistant. He's 64 years old. So it's across the gamut right now. When you look at Ryan Grubb, he's 47, and you say, well, that's somewhat experienced. But what sticks out to me is, Kyle, he has only 2 years of major college Power 5 experience as an offensive coordinator. He's followed Kalen DeBoer all through his trek from NAIA Sioux Falls to South Dakota State to Eastern Michigan to Fresno State. At Fresno State is when he had the play calling duties, and that wasn't until 2019. And then the 2020 and 21 seasons at Fresno State. University of Washington fires Jimmy Lake before the 2022 season, and that's when they hire Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer brings Ryan Grubb with him to be his offensive coordinator and play caller, and that was for the 2022 and 2023 seasons. They happened to have a quarterback named Michael Penix Jr., who was pretty darn good for them in those 2 seasons, who led college football with over 4,500 yards passing in each of those years. He's probably going to be a first or second day NFL draft pick. And so Ryan Grubb has, one, never been an offensive play caller beyond 2 years in major college football, and 2, never called plays with anyone beside Michael Penix being a quarterback at major college football level. For him to jump to the NFL would be a big leap. For him to jump to Alabama, to me, is a big leap.
Yep.
So there are a lot of unknowns with Ryan Grubb, what he would be as a play caller at this level without Michael Penix and the NFL first-round talent and Rome Odunze, a wide receiver, and the others, that the best offensive line in college football, for instance, that they had at Washington last year. So to me, it would be a far, far outside, as much as outside the box Mike Macdonald was as a hire for the Seahawks, it'd be outside the boxier to hire Ryan Grubb as an offensive coordinator. There are some people in Seattle who believe Grubb and his family want to move back here, and that this is maybe where they want to live longer term. But this is no slam dunk for a Seahawks team to pick Ryan Grubb, as great as he was as a play caller at Washington, straight into an NFL play calling job.
I know we have limited time with you, and I really appreciate you jumping on here on BAMA Football on YouTube to be with us. But I would like to have Coach Smook, if you have a question, if you don't mind, Greg. Go ahead, Coach Smook. Go ahead, chime in here.
I got a 2-parter, Greg. Appreciate you for being on once again. And I'm a veteran myself, and I see you were stationed up at Fort Lewis. I was at Hood at 3CR when we had to come up there, and we transitioned to being a striker unit. So I know you know all about them strikers up there. Yes, sir. So I remember.
That's half of Fort. The strikers took over half of Fort Lewis. I'm so old. I was Bradley fighting vehicles.
The mechanized. You was the original mechanized. I know. Yes, sir.
But 1, 2, 3 infantry in the second ID. That's right.
Look, I was 11 Charlie and at 289 at Benning, and then I came to Hood at 3CR 4th Battalion, Long Knife. So pretty long. Look, short stint, airborne air assault. It was fun, man. It was fun.
Thank you very much for serving. Thank you.
Nah, thank you. But question. So what about Ryan Grubb's whole approach to the game? I see what he does differently schematically on the college level. How would that transition to the NFL with his concepts and things of that nature? I know you alluded to what my speculation was. The Seahawks are going outside the box to do things, but how would his style and system translate to the NFL? Have you been hearing talks about that, and you could give your own personal opinion also?
Well, when I covered I'm this full-time Seahawks beat writer, and then I peeled off to cover the Huskies in the Pac-12 championship, then the Sugar Bowl, and then at the national championship game in Houston. And it struck me. I told the beat writers I was sitting with, I felt like I was watching Al Davis's old Oakland Raiders with Daryl LaMonica and Kenny Stabler. They wwere winging it down the field. I mean, any down and distance, any situation of the scoreboard, time on the clock, they were chucking it. And that would be unusual in today's NFL. As you all know, it's a real check down, use the pass game as sort of an extension of the running game, get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly because of the pass rush. Michael Penix would take shotgun and then take 4 or 5 step drops behind that, and Rome Odunze would be running 50-yard routes down the field. They don't do that in the NFL because you got guys like Chris Jones and TJ Watt and Nick Bosa running after you, and you don't have 7 seconds to throw the ball. That would be a change. He couldn't just wing it down the field as he was at Washington. But he also had the best offensive line in college football last year. He won't have that if he came to Seattle either. So he would have to change into a quicker strike passing game. He did rely on the run more than people think. He has a national reputation that Michael Penix, they threw the ball all over the place. They had a 1,200-yard rusher last year in Dylan Johnson.
Right.
And that is what their offense was predicated upon. And when they really had to win games, the Sugar Bowl, Oregon twice, it was Dylan Johnson who took over those games. To me, when they lost the national championship, the reason their offense was inert for 3.5 quarters against Michigan was because Dylan Johnson was hurt and got only a handful of carries for only 30 yards. So he would have that in the NFL. He'd have a running game. He'd have a quarterback that would be predicated on the run. I'm sure Kalen DeBoer in Alabama wants to start their offense with the run as well. So his reputation as this mad bomber deep strike guy, because that's what you see on SportsCenter with the Washington highlights. He's a little more nuanced than that, but he would have to change his pass game, to answer your question, to be get the ball out of the quarterback's hand a little more quickly in the NFL.
Totally agree, sir.
I have one more, if you don't mind, before we let you go. In terms of the direction of college football with the name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal.
Good question.
Yeah. Is it an easier? I mean, I don't know if there's an easy road in, coaching, but is the NFL, a little bit, I guess, easier to coach at than college football because it seems like things are really off the rails right now?
Absolutely. I think it's easier to walk on hot coals and chew glass shards than it is to be a major college football coach right now. Oh. Recruiting is just one thing that's absolutely gone to hell. Mm-hmm. I mean, the day after Alabama hired Kalen DeBoer, not only did Washington's roster completely desert itself. I mean, it was for a time until they restocked it and some guys came back after entering the portal. For a time, guys, all 22 of the starters in the national championship game for UW were gone and not coming back.
Wow.
You've never heard that. That sounds like fifth grade flag football. Yeah. They graduate and go to middle school. Mm-hmm. That's unheard of. Yeah. And in Alabama, you've lived through the same thing. Once Nick Saban retires, it's like, Alabama, I don't want to go here. You're like, you don't want to go to Alabama? What the hell's wrong with you? So it's completely upside down. Yeah. And the trickle-down effect of, okay, Coach DeBoer leaves for, let's use the present example. DeBoer leaves for Alabama. Washington goes raids Jed Fish from Arizona. Arizona's recruiting class is now decimated. So Arizona goes to San Jose State and gets Brennan, the coach there. And now San Jose's roster and current recruiting class are decimated. Yep. I don't know who San Jose went and raided, but they did somebody. And there's somebody at either Mountain West or the Division I AA FCS level who is now bare because of San Jose State's opening. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Not to mention that here's what's going to happen in college football, guys. It doesn't seem like it now because the money's flowing and it's almost limitless. But there's going to be a time that big shot boosters in Tuscaloosa and in Seattle and in Ann Arbor are going to say, wait a minute, why am I writing $1 million checks to guys who are going to leave possibly in a year?
In 8 months, not even a year.
Not even a year. Exactly. If my backup quarterback that you have to have this 5-star guy, we got to give him a $2 million NIL deal to get him. Okay. And then that guy doesn't start as a true freshman. He's out.
Yep.
He's going to North Carolina or wherever the hell. And that $1 million check is now going to somebody you never heard of. You didn't write it for that guy.
I like Greg.
There's going to be a time, fellas, that donor who used to shell out those checks goes, you know what? I'm going to pay for the Tuscaloosa Symphony or my yacht down in Mobile or something different than this $1 million check to this player I don't even see after 8 months. Oh. That is when change will happen in college football. But until then, because the money's still flowing. But when that stops, then the Alabamas and the Michigans and the USCs and the Washingtons will forge change. Until then, the NCAA is what it is. The cat's out of the bag on all this NIL and transfer portal stuff because the NCAA member schools refuse to regulate it. It will take the big boys, the big money schools, those boosters to stop writing checks for this to change.
Greg, thank you very much for joining us tonight. He's Greg Bell, Seattle Seahawks beat writer for the News Tribune. Greg, can you tell everybody how to follow you? We'll definitely post your social media links inside this article, but I just want to say on behalf of BAMA Football on YouTube, fam, Undefeated, our chat box is called The Undefeated. They know everything. And
good name.
So, run the thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and we really appreciate it, Greg. But where can we follow your work moving forward after this interview?
I appreciate that. It's on Twitter at GBellSeattle, whatever they call Twitter now, and on the internet at thenewstribune.com.
Okay,
Just
well,
hit you with the follow, brother.
yeah, well, we will definitely add your social media links inside, and we really appreciate. As you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but you're getting a bunch of great feedback, and we're going to point people back to your work. So we, number one, and most importantly, we appreciate your service. That's a very serious thing around here. Freedom isn't free, and we're all about it. And secondly, killer article and killer interview right here on Bama Football on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Everyone is saying preach, because we cover college football and the rules are off the rails. And I think it had a little bit to do with one of the greatest headed down to Jupiter, Florida. I think he was just like, you know what, golf sounds better than what we're at right now. Right?
Why not? Why have this headache?
Right.
I get it.
Yeah. So, but anyways, thank you again. We really appreciate it. And who knows? I don't know. This is all fluid. Things are going forward. So maybe another time we have you back. But if you ever need anything from us, don't hesitate. I have your contact info. And thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot. Very kind of you about the service. Beat Navy. Roll Tide. Thanks a lot.
Roll Tide.
Take it easy.